Dr. Heather Cateau is a visiting senior research fellow working on the Shared Island Stories between Scotland and the Caribbean project at the University of St. Andrews in Scotland. Her substantive position is as a senior lecturer in Caribbean history at the University of the West Indies St. Augustine Campus. She has held the positions of Dean of the Faculty of Humanities and Education, Head of the History Department, and University Dean. She has held fellowships at the University of Cambridge, the University of Iowa, and the University of St. Andrews. She is also past president of the Association of Caribbean Historians. Her research focus involves a revisionary approach to plantation and enslavement systems in the Caribbean. During this research fellowship, she will apply this approach to the 18th century enslavement and plantations systems, with special concentration on the past connections among communities in Scotland and the Caribbean.
I want to start by saying Happy Carnival. And for those of you who engage in Carnival, take a little chip for me. It's a pleasure to be here this evening, especially because I'm so far away from home and missing home. So it's really been great hearing some voices and hearing some Trinidadian accent. Not that I don't appreciate the international nature of this greeting, but I really had to say that. I want to talk about historicizing, decolonizing. And today I'm going to mix history, education, and our theme for today, decolonizing. I hope that this approach, which is grounding in history, will lead us to why decolonizing is so important as we try to forge new societies today. And at the same time, I hope to impress upon all of us just how central education is in our process of moving forward. You all know the content of your disciplines, and I'm sure you can point to areas that you know need decolonizing. Today, I want to focus on some approaches that can be applied. I want us to think about some things. Is it time to move beyond schools and classrooms? Is it time to be more creative with our teaching and learning methodologies? How do we effectively decolonize in a truly impactful way? History has taught us that decolonizing is not easy. It is very difficult to pin down and achieve. In the past, we have underestimated what is required. In many ways, it seems as if we've been engaged in a continuous process with no clearly defined endpoint. And in some ways, it may also be a process where the specific goals change over time. We must, however, try to deal with this matter and create a framework for decolonizing that is suited to our times and our context. I want to start with a deceptively simple question. Who are we? We are a twin island republic where numerous narratives have been forged. Our history is characterized by cruelty, violence, racism. All these descriptors are reflective of centuries of colonization. Our history has also positioned us at the periphery of the international economic system. There are enduring legacies of empire, dependency, and marginalization. And yet we rise. Our people are characterized by amazing determination, creativity, and survival instinct. We have evolved into a hybrid of blended cultures on a base that is reflective of the conundrum of diaspora versus national identities. Decimated native populations immigration of the Spanish, French, British, Africans, Indians, Chinese, Madeirans, Syrians, most recently Venezuelans, forced and voluntary, and its related complexities continue to shape our reality. This has also shaped our decolonizing journey. All communities have been resilient to aspects of the decolonizing journey. They are symbols in our built landscape and less visible remnants, not just in our education and other systems, but in our very makeup and sense of who we are. Independence has not brought the transformation envisioned. Our journey must be rethought. This has proven to be a longer journey than anyone anticipated. History has shown that it is indeed an extended process which will span decades. Much more is needed than the passage of an Emancipation Act, which took place in 1833, or an act ending indentureship almost a century later. Indeed, more is needed than changes in governance status, like our achievement of independence in 1962, or republic status in 1975. A revised assessment of our freedom journey must, therefore, focus on effective decolonizing. This must be put at the center. These are historical markers, but what can we say is our own brand of T&T decolonizing? I think this is yet to be fully developed. We seem to have always known that education is one of the vehicles best suited for decolonizing. History shows that education has received central focus in our decolonizing journey from its very start. But have we done enough? Has our approach been as holistic or as in-depth as it should be? Education has always been given a central place in the development of the people of Trinidad and Tobago. Before emancipation in 1834, only the children of free classes, most of whom were white, received formal education. However, even during enslavement, parents found ways to educate their children. These efforts intensified after emancipation. After official freedom, the state became involved, but in reality, education units were run by the white elite. Religious bodies organized schools. By the middle of the 19th century, education was dominated by the church with state assistance. What emerged is a complex mix of private and public education with strong religious connections. By the early 20th century, we see what we can very cautiously describe as early attempts to decolonize the curriculum. A new set of books were introduced, included West Indian readers, designed for the quote-unquote West Indian child, West Indian arithmetic, West Indian geography, West Indian history. Of course, these were done by Englishmen and were controversial in themselves. The British model persisted. As part of the independence battle in 1955, our first Prime Minister, Eric Williams, talked about the need for a new curriculum for West Indian schools. With independence, education was expected to play a key role in social transformation. At the Independent Youth Rally in 1962, the children of Trinidad and Tobago were told that they carried the future of the nation in their school bags. This was true. The questions for educators is, what do we put in those school bags? The post-independent era was a period of intensive decolonization and nationalization. We see the expansion of the education system reform. New narratives with revisionist perspectives have been written by academics, many of them right here at the University of the West Indies. However, in most cases, they have not been heard and internalized by the general population. There have been changes to the curricula at the primary, secondary, and tertiary levels. These changes focus on the development needs of the country, and I quote, and on instilling national pride and creating citizens who know their history and understand the role of young citizens in national development. We have also been dealing with the more visible issue of symbolic representation as a young nation. Trinidad and Tobago made a significant change in 1984 with the decision to commemorate Emancipation Day instead of Discovery Day. There have been new statues and memorials erected since the late 20th century. Many of them have been cultural icons like Lord Kitchener, the Mighty Sparrow, Calypso Rose, Sunda Popo, and sporting heroes like Hainsey Crawford and Brian Lara. So why, after all this, are we still talking about decolonizing in 2024? It has been almost a century. Is it that we did not fully understand the range and the extent of what we had to do? Have we been educated about those changes that have taken place? Or are they just things that just happened and things that we just accept as a general population without much thought as to the true significance? I think we all sense that our attempts to date have not been sufficient. And we know deep down that they have not resulted in what we anticipated. We know our education system is not fully decolonized. But I want to ask, do we have any idea where we are in the process? Do we know what success will look like? Are we using all the vehicles needed? We are now realizing that decolonizing must enter another phase. We can only conclude that a new development trajectory is necessary. As a vital corollary to the new pathway that is evolving, our education system must be rethought. In spite of the many complexities and developments, I want to stress that we have moved forward. The challenges ahead should in no way underplay the ways in which education and educators have transformed lives and created new possibilities for the people of Trinidad and Tobago. We must also factor into the equation that even though we have been trying to decolonize for almost a century, we were colonized for about 5 centuries. However, as we move towards the middle of the 21st century, there is targeted and specialized work that must be done. I want to suggest that as a first step, the challenge for all of us is to face and grapple with the inner plantation that has been planted in all of us. We cannot allow it to grow any further. It has been growing in ways never envisioned since independence. Jennifer Lavia accurately contextualizes the current reality when she notes that there is need to practice historicity, positionality, criticality, reflexivity, and rationality. She places emphasis on the need for, and I quote, resisting the inner plantation, confronting the colonization of the mind, and undermining the legacy of dependence. She sees these things as key to decolonizing processes and things that should be at the center of our education system. It is clear that the decolonizing process must involve expanding perspectives to portray views beyond the socially accepted dominant cultural group, particularly white colonizers. However, in Trinidad and Tobago, we must also engage in a multiplicity of other activities because we have to cater for several other groups. Our new narratives must unfold cognizant of the fact that we must be aware of biases, we must be aware of impediments to other groups, and this becomes even more complex because there are so many groups with different characteristics in our society. Educators must therefore be cognizant that for the effective decolonization, there is need for not only the information and materials with which to educate, but also sensitivity, creativity, and well thought out approaches. To be successful, we must therefore deal with both the formal and the informal. We also need to pay more direct attention to what we see as vehicles for education. The case can be made that closer and more sustained levels of cooperation between formal education institutions and informal institutions like museums can effectively expedite our decolonizing process. Part of our radical education reform must include aligning certain dimensions of our culture with the informal and formal curricula. The time has also come for partnering to increase interaction between institutions and facilitate mutual benefits. These potential benefits include a more holistic student experience. As I said before, you all are the educators, and a better place than I am to outline the details and the areas that need attention in your specific disciplines. However, this evening, I want to encourage you to rethink what you see as important areas of content in your curricula. I want to encourage you to rethink the methods you use to facilitate the learning that must take place, and also to rethink how you assess your students. My goal was to use history to provide context and start the thinking process. You now have the hard work to do. I want to close with two examples. Excuse me. As a developing country, one of the most important contemporary challenges is a call for new historicizing and a contemporary focus on statues and monuments that are visible symbols of colonization in our society. Has this international, regional, and national dimension of the very visible process of decolonization been embraced and used by our educators? It is the ideal time to do this so that our students can learn about the past and at the same time be part of an active decolonizing process. Their input can be significant as the government and society engage in a process to decide what the endpoint will be. I want to use one example. Excuse me again. In connection with the European, Latin American, and Caribbean Community Museums project, the Caribbean Civilization class at the University of the West Indies was given an assignment that required students to visit a museum or memorial and create a reflective piece, highlighting what was learned and its impact. Our students did us proud. Their responses clearly showed that there's a role for statues and monuments in discussions of race, heritage, and nationhood. Out of the reflections of our students, we were given a mandate for a new process of historicizing in the 21st century. The learning that took place could not have been achieved in a classroom by even the best lecture. The information learned, the perspective developed, not only help students regarding content and information needed to pass examinations, it facilitated their own development as citizens of Trinidad and Tobago. They learned things they would never forget. We need more active sites like museums and statues, which can be used to positively impact on decolonizing our education system. My second example, I have in another seminar described the SAA examination as a significant colonial monument itself. I have likened it to the Statue of Columbus because it has taken on the role of a recurring historical marker that evokes strong emotions which stay with us throughout our entire lives. Can we decolonize our curriculum without questioning why it is still present in the form that it is? Can we go on without examining its fitness for our future? I want to suggest that the examination, just as other issues that have been part of this discussion, must be regarded as something from the past, which we must look at and ask ourselves, is it fit to be one of our signifiers in the future? This cannot be done without understanding our history. Our past makes words like selection and placement take on added meaning. Can what was designed to be fair and give equity in the colonial era still serve the same purpose in 2024? Are even our notions of what is fair the same? With education philosophies which now include universal, holistic, and seamless education for all, what should assessment look like? What should be used to assess best performances in the context of the skills that are needed for the 21st century? Thus, decolonizing is indeed important and multifaceted. But what comes with or after the process must also engage our focus. It is one thing to replace or unravel the vestiges of colonialism, but what are we building up in its place? Before I end, I leave you with this. Have we focused too much on decolonizing only? How long can we be decolonizing? Is it now a buzzword that has become a casual phrase? What do we mean by the term? Where are we going when we use the term? Is there a plan? Could it be that we need to concentrate not just on decolonizing, but on re-envisioning where we want to be? What should a decolonized education system in Trinidad and Tobago look like? More importantly, perhaps, what kind of Trinidad and Tobago are we trying to create? I want to suggest that as important as decolonizing is, we must remember it is not an end in itself. Thank you.